Hello everyone. So today we're going to see how we can scrape New York Times was the earlier one, Reddit. So we're going to scrape a subreddit. The Node.js subreddit is what we're going to scrape today. Okay. So let's see if we can scrape these stories. Okay. Maybe even get how many comments or how many upvotes it has. Let's see what we can get away with. So to start off, you need the boilerplate code, which I've already written a little bit. The logic I'm going to write live, otherwise there's no point in live. I can't remember all this anyway. So basically, you invoke Puppeteer. If you don't have it already, please load it up. Let's launch it in a headless mode, and then we're going to pass the user agent string. In this case, it will imitate Chrome on a Mac. Okay, and so that Reddit doesn't think that we are a crawler, right? And so then, like any browser, you just open the browser and open a new page inside the browser and navigate to the node subreddit and just wait for the body to load, right? Just like in jQuery, where basically on body load or whatever, you're just waiting for on document load. And the moment that happens, the evaluate function is like getting into the console and trying out different queries. So here you can do any selector, like a CSS selector, to get data. So let's try that a little bit, right? So let's see what it entails. Let's right click on something here on a post and see what it is made of in terms of what is the structure they're using. So there is a h3 tag, so we'll be using that. But I wouldn't go directly for pieces of data. That's a big mistake. All right. So always what I'm looking for is some sort of encapsulator by which I can pull out. I would not pull out details of every piece of data. I want this entire thing, right? Can I just divide this entire document into sub documents? So what does it, like for example, here, if I go here, this div here, this is an unnamed div. This div here starts defining with classes and stuff like that, is where it starts. So if I just sort of close this, that's, I think my guess is that's one story, and that's the next story. If you look at that, so it's getting blocked, see, and then that's the next story, that's the next story. So each of these divs, let's blow it up again, and no, actually let's do that. That's where the definition of this division starts. You can see there's all sorts of weird class names, and scroller item is the only word I recognize, but I would still not go for that. I would go for post. Look at that word. The word post as a class name makes more sense to me. So it gives me the assurance that that's something meaningful. I won't change and not all this gibberish. So ignore all of that. Let's see if we can pull out posts and divide this document, humongous document, into sub documents, right? So for that, you're going to use document, literally dot body, getting into the body, dot query selector, right? So that is a function you're going to use a lot in Puppeteer. Selector should be enough, but if, for example, if there was only one item that you're expecting from this, then this should be enough. So this is a function, but we are not going to use a singular version of this. We use a plural version, for want of a better name, which will return an array actually. So I'm going to store that array here. I'm going to call it let post be equal to, so that's an array. I'm expecting an array there. Here I can run a CSS selector here basically. So I'm just going to call it, so we saw that post. So I'm going to call the class name post. If it was just an ID, not a class name, I could call it with a hash, right? This is like any jQuery selector really. So I'm going to use the dot operator to tell this function that it's actually a class name that I'm going to call. And so this will break the whole document into sub documents, which will just delivered into posts. But this is not enough. Let's quickly now iterate through each of these posts, right? So I'm going to do, because it's an array, I'm just going to do a for each on it. Okay. So for each, I'm just going to start off with a function and it will give me an item back, right? So each of those items, and which should give me a proper function, right? So that's where I'll write my code. Bingo, there you go. So now I can do whatever I want with the item piece that is coming here. Each of those items is each of the posts, right? So now let's see, quickly get a win by getting a piece of data now. Now we are free to play around. It's very secure. Otherwise, if we will be all over the place. We might get a piece from here and mix it with something from here. We don't want to do that. So now we can imagine the entire HTML is just this one post. So what can we get out of it? Maybe the most obvious thing is to get the title. So let's locate the title. We already said, remember that it was a h3 class, so this makes it life very easy for me. h3 doesn't occur willy-nilly in the wild, so I'm going to call it item. Use the item now rather than the document. We don't need a body or anything like that. We go straight to query selector. All, in this case we don't need the all part because we only have one h3 inside of it. So we're going to call it h3. We've seen that that's where the headline is all the time, h3, and this will give us it should give us the entire object. We need the inner text of it, otherwise it will be a lot of gibberish. So we're going to get that and pass it to a variable. Let's say we want to call it let title be that. All right, so let me save it quickly. I think I'm running out of charge as well. So I'm going to call it, what should I call it? Get dot.js. That's what I'm going to call it. And so I'm going to quickly pass this back onto me. So the way I would do that is I would simply have this here return something. We need to work backwards here, right? Return some sort of items or some array, and items itself could be containing of each of these posts. So what I'll do is, but we don't need the whole post. We need each of those titles, ideally in some sort of associative array, so that we can make sense of that data. So I'm going to declare an array here, which will be post, let's say items, and let's just initialize that here. And then every time I find something, let me push it to it, right? So that's a good way of doing it. So I'm going to say post items dot push, and it's an array, so I need to open up that part again, and it's an associative array, so I'm going to call it title and pass the variable title to it and see what happens. Now this is not enough, so we need to pass items back. So I'm going to call items itself by a variable items equals an array of, let's say, posts, and that'll be the post items. All right, copy that from there, return it. Let me just sort of make sure you understand what's happening here. For each title we find, we're pushing it into post items, which is just an array which gets going into, we can pass out the data here, so I'm making space for it. Rather than passing post item directly, I'm going to push it into post and then pass it back. Then I can pass out the data like title and all that eventually there. So that's just good habits, right? So now I can go here and run it. What did I call it? I'll say node reddit underscore get .js. If I run it, please work. It takes a while to load. I think I should just better charge my system. I don't want to lose this video. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know why it's taking so long. Timeout error. So let me just This keeps happening sometimes. I'm just going to change my network here and see if I can get data using a different network. Yes, there you go. Success. We got the titles from each of those items. So we're doing something right. So let's continue in the streak of success here by now. What else can we get? Right. I would suggest we get the I don't know, the href of the link itself. That should be the easiest one that we can target next. So the way we can do that is there a href? Yeah, there you go. So this link to the post is what we need. So that should be easy. In most of these cases, I've done this so many times that I know that I just need to get the link. Once you get the title, I'll just get the link and get it out of my system here. Okay, so the way to get it is call it that, and instead of inner text, which will give us back the same thing again, we don't need that. We already have the title. We're going to call that back, and then do link and link. Okay, so now I'm so confident that it'll work that I don't need to run it. Let's see if we can get something else. How about we get this one? Let's see what it takes to get. This will be interesting data piece, isn't it? To get the upvotes. So there it is lying in some weird corner there. All right. So we're going to use a trick here though. What I want to do is actually see there is a name for this, which is there is a class called vote button. All right. But the problem with that vote button is there is another class called vote button here. So instead of that, I'm going to locate the ID upvote button. That's what I want. Anything that's after that, right after upvote button, whatever is this div is what I want. Okay. So because I don't want to specify it directly because the class name here is so weird that I cannot possibly put this in code, right, and get away with it. It'll probably change tomorrow morning or in the next load, right? But then vote button and upvote and those kind of things will not change. So maybe I can get the ID this time. But the problem with that is you can see that the ID itself is upvote button dash some gibberish again. So again, no matter, because we can still get it by using a little trick in CSS where an operator will tell what the ID should contain rather than the whole ID itself. So enough talking. Let's just try it out. Right. So very carefully, let's call it something. Let's call it let votes equals. Let's get rid of that item dot query selector. Boom. Now is where the trickery comes, right? So we need to use the ID. So I'm going to simply call it ID equals. Suppose it was, we knew the exact ID. We could have just gone with ID equals upvote dash button. Right. So let's write assuming that for a second. Upvote dash button. But that's not reality. So we're going to use an operator here called the star operator. It means somewhere in the ID there's a word upvote button. All right. And that'll give us the upvote button itself. But what we need is the division next to it. All right. So there is an operator for that, which is the plus operator. And then if you say div, it will give us the div contents. And what we need is the contents, which is in the text of it. Bingo. So let's see if this long shot has worked out for us. Votes, and then run. So it gives us the title, the link, as well as the votes, if this works. And my connection holds up. Yes! This is it, guys. See, you got the title, you got the link, and you got the number of votes for each. Okay? All right, I'm very happy with that. Let's get one more thing before we leave here. I think my fancy is the comments part, so I'm just gonna go see what the comments entails. Again, here we see something weird, right? So we see that, yeah, the class name is so much gibberish here. We can't go directly go to it, but we can go to the I class here, which is the icon. And if you can just say there is an icon comment here as a clear class, so we don't even have to, mince words there. We can just do an icon, the class selector, icon comment, and then go to the next span item after that. So let's try that again. It's very similar to this. The trickery is, I would say, comments, and instead of ID, let's remove this whole thing. We'll just call it dot. What was it called? Sorry. Icon comment, right? Not just icon, there might be a lot of icons here. Icon comment, that's what we're looking for. And then not the div, the span, if I remember right, and then the inner text of that should give us a comment. So we're going to put that here, comments colon comments. All right, guys, let's run. Let's see. Woo, look at that, we got it. Words, comments. Sometimes it just says comment because I think there is no comments yet. Yeah, so there's nothing yet. It simply says comment. Don't go by this here. Actually, when you every time you reload it to reload something new, so there, just a comment, which is not yet. Right. So here we go, guys. That's it. That in that way you can get anything, and it's an associative array, so you can do whatever you want with it. Export to CSV, blah blah blah, and actually use this to scrape data. But this is not production ready though, don't be mistaken by it. One of the things you need to do is basically rotate user agents, because just sending one user agent all the time is the same signature you're sending, and that'll be odd for the web servers and they might block you. The other thing, if you really want to deploy this at scale for thousands of URLs, is to use is to keep changing IP addresses. Otherwise, you will get IP blocked anyway, because this particular machine's IP is going to remain the same. So best thing to do is use a rotating proxy service. I have one. I have a SaaS service which does that. I humbly request or suggest you can try it out, because we're giving out 1,000 API calls absolutely free per month. No questions asked, no credit card required. Takes just a simple free sign up, gives you an API key. Put the API key and then route all your requests through this URL, our API endpoint here. And you're going to pass reddit.com/r/node directly here instead of directly accessing Reddit, and we will handle everything behind the scenes. We route it through a couple of million proxies, residential, private, secure IP addresses, non-spammy, non-hacker compromised IP addresses, and we automatically handle retries, and we handle proxy browser identity rotation that we just mentioned, and we also have do captchas behind the scenes, as well as we can even render this, so you don't even need to use Puppeteer for this. You can just use a curl request in any language and get the data just like so, but in any language, and you'll be able to access it without loading up Puppeteer. So it can really scale fast, because we do the JavaScript rendering also for you behind the scenes. So check it out. Even otherwise, if you don't use us, please use somebody else's. But if you have to scale something like this, and if you're serious about this, you need third-party rotating proxy services. No way around it. Right? So otherwise, even otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from this. Thank you very much. Thanks.